Me, Alan Durband from Liverpool, England, who taught one of the Beatles. And who was it you taught?
Paul McCartney, young man who came to me, I suppose, some 8 or 9 years ago, then quite undistinguished in the musical world, but not so undistinguished as a student of English. And it was an English master that I knew him best.
Did you think perhaps that the guitar playing was interfering with his studies and tried to stop him?
Well, towards the end it did get a little much. He was rather late with his essays, and he wasn't doing so awfully well in his other 2 subjects, which he was doing for advanced level. But in English he had a very definite interest, and it wasn't hard to keep him to his texts.
Well, did you try and stop him from playing the guitar?
No, I didn't try to stop him. In fact, it would have been impossible, because he was a young man who knew what he wanted to do, and playing the guitar was, from probably the age of 15, an obsession with him. Indeed, at the age of 18, about a week before he left school, he came to me and asked me my advice. He wanted to know whether he should carry on playing the guitar professionally, because he'd been offered a job in Hamburg playing the guitar at £20 a week, or whether he should carry on and become a teacher, as he'd always intended to be. Well, I'm afraid I gave him the schoolmaster's advice and said, no, you get your qualifications first and then carry on with your guitar playing, because 1 in a million only will succeed, and it may not be you.
Speaking of a million, how much have they made, you know, or how much has he made?
Well, Paul did say, but not in a boastful manner, when I asked him, he did say that he'd made his million, and I should well imagine that he has, plus quite a little more since the last time I spoke to him.
The whole group have almost a cynical approach or attitude towards adult life, some people think. Would you agree with this, and if so, why do you think it's so?
I'm glad they're critical. They typify a kind of English North Country attitude, a particular brand of wit which is all the time, as they say, taking the mickey out of the people in authority. They wouldn't recognise that there was anybody better than them. They'd always want to bring everyone down to the common man level and talk to him with the kind of wit that I think you recognise in Australia too.
Why do you think this is valuable?
Well, there's a lot to be done in this world, a lot of reforms that need to be made, especially in a place like Britain, which is orthodox and built on tradition. And people who break with tradition, people like the Beatles, who've had the cheek to make a million, who've come from a town or a city which is not really one of the best ones, which is off the map and not on the map. It's a good thing when they challenge the established things and come out successful, as they've done, you see.
At what standard of their education did they decide to toss it in?
Well, now, both Paul and George went to the school I taught at, the Liverpool Institute, and they had what we call a grammar school education. It means they're the cream of the boys and girls of their age. They've been selected for higher education. John Lennon, similarly, had a higher education. He went to a rival grammar school in Liverpool called Quarry Bank, and I think the first group they formed was called the Quarrymen, after Quarry Bank High School, which John Lennon attended. And then he went to art school too.
The music does seem to suggest tremendous energy. Is that typical of that part of the country?
There is a great vitality in the north of England. Possibly, I don't know, because of the industries that there are in the north of England. Everybody's very busy. The leisured life is for the south of England, and the northerners are people of humour, active people, alert people.
You wouldn't be from the north, would you?
Well, there you are. You see, I built up my own part of the country. I'm a Liverpool man myself.
And do you still see much of Paul?
Yes, he came round just a week before we left, the Tuesday before we left. Came to see us with his father, and came in a lovely Aston Martin. I very much envied him that. He wouldn't have had an Aston Martin if he'd been a school teacher, I can assure you. And we see him when he performs in Liverpool too. He usually sends complimentary tickets, and we attend his performances.
What do you think will become of this 4?
Now, that's a problem. I don't know. Do you mean in the entertainment world? Will they carry on and be old Beatles?
Or even more generally? Do you think they might be attracted to other interests, politics, or...?
I shouldn't think so. I would imagine from talking to Paul that his interests lie, again, in the creative field. I think he'd like to carry on writing music, and maybe, I don't know, he hasn't said so, but possibly he'd go on to put on other people as an impresario or something. I think he is in fact a shareholder in British Lion Films, is he not? And maybe this would be the sort of thing he'd develop. I just honestly don't know. It's something that he keeps to himself.